Tensions have been running high in Kangjang village on Jeju Island over the ongoing project to build a naval base there. Activists have been railing against the plan. They say it's going to destroy the tranquility of the island as well as the local habitat. The Defense Ministry, on the other hand, argues that the naval base is needed to strengthen national security and also to boost the regional economy. And the issue has received a substantial amount of attention overseas since it was launched in 2009. The New York Times recently had several interesting articles written by people who are involved with the issue. And joining us now with more on this is Matthew Hoey. He is the outreach coordinator for the Save Jeju Island campaign. He's also a missile defense analyst at the Military Space Transparency Project. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for taking the time to speak with us. As I mentioned, you're on the side of the people who oppose this naval base project at Kangjang Village. What are your concerns for this project?
Well, my concerns are threefold, with a fourth, actually, that I don't think enough attention is being paid to. But one is that the base doesn't properly address South Korea's national security needs, which I believe is primarily the threat from the north. The base isn't properly positioned to address the potential for a ballistic missile attack against population centers such as Seoul. Number two is the environmental component. Jeju, whether you speak to Koreans here in the United States or people in Kangjang Village, the beauty of the island is undeniable. 9 UNESCO geoparks, 3 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, it's a biosphere reserve. The idea of an eco-friendly naval base just simply sounds absurd to me. The next is the environment. The economic connection. I don't think that's a very sincere argument to offer funding to Jeju Island to make improvements, but to tie it to a military base and to basically, no military base, no funding. I don't see how an economic boost has to be tied to militarization on the island. And then the next and the fourth, which I speak of hesitantly because I am new. I am new to Korea. I know it's a very emotional issue, but it's the 4-3 Sasam component. Jeju Island has been through genocide. There are people who are still living on the island who have witnessed the genocide and have lost members of their family. And the idea of having the military on Jeju Island again, I don't think the government is giving enough attention to the emotional trauma that some people have been through in Kangjang.
Yeah, the fourth one, I think, may be one that we probably want to do a little bit more research into, but I think you're clear on the first 3 points, and I'm sure we'll come back to all of those. I want to ask you about some of the, I guess, the back and forth recently in the New York Times. We saw Gloria Steinem write an article that has been reported on in the New York Times. It was called "The Arms Race Intrudes on Paradise." And a letter in response to that was written by Nam Jin-soo from the South Korean Embassy in Washington to rebut that article. What's your take on all of that? I mean, Nam is essentially saying that the Jeju base was built solely for the defense of South Korea and has no connection to American military installations. But I think what you're saying with your number one reason there is essentially that this base really does not bolster the national defense of Korea. But what about the connection with the U.S. base? So what's your take on what Nam had to say?
Well, actually, within the week, the New York Times published a rebuttal to his op-ed that was authored by me, where I laid out my counterpoints. And, I mean, not only does it not address the national security needs of South Korea, it actually introduces new security threats. Basically, the base and its location at Jeju Island, in particular, the flagship of this base is the KDX-3 Aegis destroyer that's equipped with a missile defense system. This ship cost $982 million US. The ship alone cost more than the construction of the entire base. So there's two types of interceptor missiles that could be integrated into this Aegis ship, and the ones that are currently integrated into the ship right now simply don't have a long enough range to strike any missiles coming over the DMZ. So the presence of the base and the location of the missile defense is completely and totally inappropriate to address the North Korean threat. And then in the event that these are expanded to a more enhanced version of missile interceptors, and these are the words of the Pentagon had said in 1999, that the Aegis system with the enhanced missile defense interceptors is completely and totally inappropriate for shooting down North Korean ballistic missiles because they simply fly too low in the atmosphere. So I mean, it's indisputable from the Pentagon to analysts on all sides of the political spectrum here in the U.S. and in the international community. The Aegis missile defense system based on Jeju Island does not address the North Korean threat. What a lot of people are concerned about is that this is forced projection towards the disputed maritime zone towards China, which is going to open up a whole can of worms for South Korea.
So where do you think they should put the base?
You know, I'm hesitant to say that the base should be put somewhere else because I think that there are some people in the opposition who want to pit villages against one another and communities against one another. I do think the base should be closer to the mainland. I do think the base should be further up into the north, where the most immediate security threat originates. It's no matter which way you look at it, placing the base on Jeju Island invites more security threats, and it could lead South Korea into an arms race with China, which is something that South Korea simply can't afford to engage in.
So you're not disputing the military's need or desire to have this base. You're just saying this is the wrong place to have it. It doesn't resolve the national defense issues. Maybe put it somewhere else would be more effective.
You know, ultimately, at the end of the day, I think the question for all people, whether you're a peace activist or you're more of a hawk, a more conservative type who's pro-military, and I want to place emphasis. I don't think we should undermine the importance of the U.S.-South Korea security partnership. At the end of the day, though, I think all people really need to ask themselves the question, why Jeju Island? The location simply doesn't make sense. If you believe that South Korea needs to bolster their naval presence, if you believe that national security should be priority one, even people who take that position need to ask themselves the question, why Jeju Island? When you sit back and you study, the different aspects of the environmental impact, the economic ramifications, the security implications, I believe that most people would say this isn't the right location for the base.
Have you talked to U.S. officials about this? What's their position on this whole issue?
Surprisingly here in the U.S., a lot of former military and a lot of more hawk-type analysts at the think tanks, it's kind of unanimous here in the U.S., at least, that people are saying that this base is about China. This base is about a U.S.-South Korean security presence in that disputed maritime zone. But officially, the U.S. military has been mum. They're not saying much. So I've filed multiple Freedom of Information Act requests with the U.S. Navy, the Pentagon in general, and the Missile Defense Agency. I was pushing hard to have those addressed as early as today. But for the most part, the United States military has been quiet.
Interesting. I would presume they don't want to get involved in a domestic issue, at least.
Well, the last time that the United States military was on the record where it was really a significant message was in 1999. The Pentagon issued a document. It was titled Theater Missile Defense Architecture Options for the Asia Pacific, and it was put out by the Pentagon. And the Pentagon had actually said that the Aegis missile defense system was completely and totally inappropriate for protecting the top two-thirds of South Korea in the mainland. It was totally inappropriate for protecting South Korea from a ballistic missile attack from the north.
Can you talk a little bit more as well about the environmental concerns? Obviously, the government here is saying that the environmental assessment is showing that the project is not going to affect the environment. You think that's, I would guess, ludicrous?
I spent 16 days sleeping on the Jeongdok coast, sleeping where the military base will be, along with 40 other activists. I'd say 90% of them from either from the mainland or from Jeju Island. And the coastline is a single piece of volcanic stone. Beautiful, beautiful coastline, very picturesque. Samsung, the lead contractor, is coming in and they're trying to level the coastline. So they're taking jackhammers to the coastline, trying to break up the rocks. They're bringing in rocks from outside to fill in the holes, to level it off so they can eventually pour concrete. We have video that was shot of underwater scenes directly off of the coast where the military base will be, where the dredging is taking place. And it's soft coral beds. If the pictures are astounding, it's something that you'd see in a nature film. And they're dredging that. They have these massive 25-foot concrete structures called tetrapods and multi-ton structures. These are going to be placed into the ocean to build up the coastline. So it's an incredibly destructive process. I mean, this idea that there can be something called an eco-friendly naval base is absolutely absurd. the capacity for the naval base is 2 aircraft carriers, 2 submarines, and large destroyers. And I don't think we can't underestimate the size of these destroyers. How you can have an environmental presence like that is beyond me.
Well, the construction is apparently ongoing, but I'm sure we've not heard the last of this issue, and we do appreciate your time to speak with us about it this morning.
Thank you very much. You have a good day.
You too. We were speaking with Matthew Hoey. He's the outreach coordinator for the Save Jeju Island campaign. He's also a missile defense analyst at the Military Space Transparency Project.